A single dad waiter walks into a fancy restaurant and deliberately spills hot coffee on a powerful CEO in front of everyone. The room goes silent. Security rushes in. But then he says something that makes even the CEO freeze in shock. What he reveals next will change her life and her entire company forever. What on earth do you think you're doing? The sharp voice sliced through the soft hum of clinking glasses and quiet piano music as a steaming cup of coffee splashed across the CEO's pristine white blouse. Gasps rippled through the elegant restaurant. Every eye turned toward the chaos. Silverware paused mid-air, conversations froze, and a suffocating silence settled in. The man responsible, a weary-looking waiter in his late 30s, didn't move. His name tag read Ethan. His expression was calm, almost too calm for someone who had just drenched one of the most powerful women in the city. His jaw was tight, but there was something in his eyes, a storm, a sadness, maybe even defiance. It wasn't the face of a careless worker. It was the face of a man carrying years of pain. Clara Voss stood there, shaking with disbelief. The CEO of Voss Tech, she was a woman used to control of her company, her image, her surroundings. She was known for being sharp, calculating, and intimidatingly composed. But now, standing in front of dozens of shocked executives, her blouse dripping with coffee, she looked almost human, vulnerable and furious all at once. She straightened her spine, clutching her designer blazer, and hissed, "Do you have any idea who I am?" The man's answer came slowly, but each word landed heavy. "Yes," Ethan said, his voice steady but quiet. "I know exactly who you are." The manager, a balding man in his 50s, rushed forward, face red and panicked. "Ms. Voss, please, I'm so sorry. He's new here. He must have slipped." But Ethan raised his hand slightly, stopping him mid-sentence. His voice was firm, controlled. "No, I didn't slip. I did it on purpose." The air was sucked out of the room. You could hear the faint ticking of the chandelier lights above, the soft hiss of the espresso machine behind the bar. Every waiter stood frozen, unsure if they should step forward or back away. Clara blinked, unable to process what she'd just heard. "You what?" "I did it on purpose," Ethan repeated, his tone quiet but unyielding. "Because there's something you need to hear." The manager's face turned white. "Ethan, enough. You're done here," he hissed through clenched teeth. "Apologize right now, or—" "I won't apologize," Ethan said simply. "Not this time." The tension thickened, pressing down on everyone in the room. Even the guests at nearby tables, wealthy men and women in suits, were whispering among themselves, torn between curiosity and discomfort. Clara took a slow breath, fighting to regain her composure. She glanced around the restaurant, noticing the dozens of eyes on her. The CEO, who prided herself on perfection, now stood drenched, humiliated, and uncertain. Yet there was something in Ethan's expression that stopped her from lashing out again. It wasn't arrogance. It was pain, deep, quiet pain that made her hesitate. "Why would you do something like that?" she finally asked, voice low and sharp as glass. "Do you enjoy ruining people's nights?" Ethan's lips pressed into a thin line. "No," he said softly, "but some nights deserve to be ruined." The manager looked like he was about to faint. "Please, Ms. Voss, let me handle this." "No," Clara interrupted, holding up a hand. Her instincts as a leader kicked in. The same instincts that made her the youngest female CEO in the industry. She studied Ethan, her mind running through possibilities. Was he trying to make a statement? Was this some sort of protest? A setup? "Who sent you?" she demanded. "Are you trying to make a fool out of me? Is this some journalist stunt?" Ethan shook his head. "No one sent me. This is between you and me." Her eyes narrowed. "I don't even know you." "Oh, but you should," he murmured. "Because the choices you've made, they changed my entire life." A murmur spread through the restaurant again. The executives at her table exchanged uneasy glances. Something about his words carried weight, a strange, haunting kind of truth. Clara tilted her head, studying him. For a brief second, her anger flickered into curiosity. "You think I owe you something?" Ethan's voice dropped lower, almost trembling now. "Not me, but maybe the people who paid the price for your success." Her brows furrowed. "What are you talking about?" Ethan took a deep breath, and for the first time, the mask of composure cracked. His eyes glistened with emotion he couldn't hold back anymore. "You don't remember, do you? 3 years ago, you shut down an entire department of factory workers at Vostek. Hundreds lost their jobs overnight. No warning, no severance. You said it was for automation efficiency. My wife was one of them." Clara froze. The room fell completely silent again. Even the background music seemed to fade away. Ethan continued, his voice trembling but clear. "She worked for your company for 7 years. She was loyal, hardworking, and proud of her job. When you cut that department, she begged to be transferred. She was sick, but she didn't tell anyone because she couldn't afford to lose the insurance. And then she did lose it. Because of you. Because of a decision made in some boardroom." He swallowed hard, his hands shaking slightly. 2 months later, she was gone. Clara's face paled. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Ethan's voice cracked as he finished. "So yeah, I know who you are. And now you know why I spilled that coffee. Because you needed to feel something for once." The chandelier lights flickered slightly above them. For the first time, Clara Voss, the woman who never showed weakness, had no response. Her power, her status, her pride, all of it seemed meaningless in that single, heavy moment. And Ethan stood there, not as a waiter, but as a grieving husband finally being heard. Security was called instantly. The sound of polished shoes clicking against the marble floor broke the tense silence as 2 tall guards approached. The manager, pale and sweating bullets, whispered urgently, "Please, Ms. Voss, let us handle this before it gets any worse." But Clara raised her hand, her voice icy and controlled. "Wait, don't escort him out yet." Her words cut through the air like glass. "I want to know why." Ethan's hands trembled as he carefully placed the empty coffee pot on a nearby tray. His pulse pounded in his ears. His instincts screamed at him to walk away, but his heart told him to stay. For too long, he'd stayed silent. Tonight, that silence broke. He looked directly at her, and the rawness in his eyes made even the guards hesitate. "You probably don't remember me," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "But 3 years ago, your company laid off over 100 factory workers during the automation shift. My wife was one of them." Clara's brow furrowed, more out of annoyance than recognition. "That has nothing to do with." She begged for a transfer. Ethan interrupted, his tone sharper now. "She had medical issues, but she needed that job. She'd been loyal to Vostek for 7 years. She believed in your company. Then one morning, she got an email saying her department no longer existed. No meeting, no severance, no apology. Just gone." A stunned hush spread across the restaurant. Even the clinking glasses at nearby tables had stopped. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats, not sure whether to leave or listen. Ethan's breathing quickened as the floodgates opened. She lost her health insurance the same day. 2 months later, she collapsed at home. I tried to get her to the hospital, but we couldn't afford the treatment. She died before the ambulance arrived." He stopped, swallowing hard. His voice softened. She was 32. A heavy silence hung between them. Somewhere in the distance, a waiter dropped a spoon, the metallic clink echoing like a heartbeat. Clara's face remained composed, but her eyes betrayed a flicker of something. Discomfort, maybe guilt. "I make business decisions, not personal ones," she said quietly but firmly. "I didn't even know your wife." Ethan let out a bitter laugh that made her flinch. "That's the point," he said, voice trembling with emotion. "You never know the people your decisions destroy. To you, it's just a signature on paper. To us, it's everything." He reached into his apron pocket and slowly pulled out a small, worn photograph. The edges were frayed, and the colors had faded with time. He held it up for her to see. In the picture was a smiling woman with soft eyes and a little girl sitting on her lap. A girl with curly pigtails and a missing front tooth. "That's my wife, Emily," he said, his voice cracking. "And that's my daughter, Lily. She's 8 now. Every night she asks when mommy's coming home. And I tell her that mommy had to go rest because she worked too hard. She thinks her mom died because she got too tired at work." Clara's lips parted slightly, but no words came out. Her chest rose and fell faster than before. "I didn't come here to embarrass you," Ethan continued, softer now but still firm. "I came here because my daughter deserves to know that her mother's death meant something. That maybe, just maybe, the people who caused it might finally see her." Clara's jaw tightened. "I didn't cause her death," she said defensively. "I can't possibly be held accountable for every layoff." "You can't," Ethan snapped, his composure finally breaking. "Then who can? You make millions making those decisions, and people like my wife lose everything because of them. You call it efficiency, progress, business strategy, but for families like mine, it's a death sentence." The guards glanced at Clara, awaiting her signal to intervene, but she didn't move. Something in Ethan's words had pinned her in place. Her mind raced back through the years, the board meetings, the financial reports, the endless discussions about automation. She remembered the faces in the company newsletters, the smiling factory workers holding up Vostek banners, proud of what they built. And then she remembered how, in one meeting, she'd approved the cut without a second thought. Now, standing before her, was the human cost of that decision. Ethan's voice wavered. "Do you know what it's like to watch someone you love fade away because you can't afford the medicine? To tell your child you'll be fine, even when you're not sure where your next paycheck will come from?" He took a deep breath and looked around the room. "You all sit here in fancy suits, celebrating another successful merger, while the people who made that possible are scraping by. You don't see the janitors, the cashiers, the waiters. But we see you every day, and sometimes we wonder if you'll ever see us back." A soft murmur spread across the guests. One executive shifted in his chair, avoiding eye contact. Another woman, clearly uncomfortable, glanced at Clara as if urging her to end this confrontation. But Clara didn't speak. For the first time in a long time, she had no polished response, no PR-ready defense. Just silence. Ethan looked down at the photo again, then tucked it back into his pocket. His voice broke as he said, "I just wanted you to feel what it's like when something precious is taken from you, even for a moment." He turned, ready to walk away, but Clara finally found her voice. It was softer, unsteady. "What was her name?" He paused. "Emily." Clara nodded slowly, her gaze lowering to the dark coffee stains spreading across her blouse, a mark she could wash off in an hour. But the man before her would carry his stains forever. And for the first time in her life, Clara Voss, the untouchable CEO, didn't feel powerful. She felt ashamed. Security moved closer, their presence heavy and intimidating. But Clara lifted her hand again, slow, deliberate, commanding. "Go on," she said softly, her voice lacking the edge it had before. It was no longer the voice of a CEO giving an order. It was the voice of a woman trying to understand something she'd spent her whole life avoiding. Ethan nodded, exhaling shakily as if the air itself had been trapped in his chest for years. "After my wife passed," he began, "everything fell apart. Our home was the first to go. I couldn't keep up with the mortgage payments after the hospital bills piled up. I sold everything I could, furniture, jewelry, even her old car, just to keep the lights on and food on the table for Lily." He paused, glancing down at his calloused hands. "When that wasn't enough, we moved into a one-room apartment. No heat in the winter, no AC in the summer. I leave before sunrise, take whatever job I could get. I mopped office floors at night, loaded delivery trucks in the morning, washed dishes in restaurants. Every dollar went toward keeping Lily fed and in school. Every night, I'd come home and she'd be asleep, clutching that same picture of her mom. And every morning, she'd wake up before me just to draw a new picture of us. Me, her, and Mommy smiling together." The restaurant was utterly silent. The executives who had been chatting minutes ago were now staring at their plates, their expensive watches and diamond bracelets suddenly feeling meaningless. Even the waitstaff stood motionless, some fighting back tears. Ethan looked around the room, his voice trembling but steady. "You all toast to success," he said bitterly. "To mergers, profits, market domination. But while you're celebrating, people like me are just trying to survive your success." His words hung in the air like smoke. One executive coughed awkwardly, muttering something under his breath before going quiet again. Another woman looked away, ashamed. Clara slowly sat down, her anger melting into something she couldn't quite name. Guilt, maybe, or realization. The powerful, untouchable suddenly looked small against the backdrop of the opulent dining room. Around her, her colleagues avoided her gaze, pretending to scroll through their phones or sip from empty glasses. But Clara's eyes stayed fixed on Ethan. "Why spill the coffee?" she finally asked. Her tone had changed, softer, quieter. "Why not just talk to me?" Ethan gave a weary smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Because talking doesn't get your attention," he said. "I've written emails. I've called your company. I've sent letters asking for help, asking for someone to listen, and I got nothing. Not even a 'we're sorry for your loss.' Just automated replies. But spill coffee on a CEO?" Suddenly everyone in the room stops and listens. A murmur ran through the guests again, but this time it wasn't judgmental. It was thoughtful, uneasy. Some of them shifted in their seats, realizing the ugly truth in his words. Ethan continued, his voice steadier now. "I didn't do this to embarrass you. I did it to make you see me. To make you see the people your company forgot. The ones who built your factories, cleaned your offices, and packed your products. The ones who lost everything so that your profits could rise." Clara's fingers tightened around the edge of her napkin. Her perfectly manicured nails dug into the fabric, leaving small creases. She had heard plenty of complaints before, from employees, from activists, from journalists. But this felt different. This wasn't a report or a statistic. This was a man with nothing left to lose, standing in front of her, bleeding truth. "I don't expect you to fix what happened," Ethan added, his voice cracking slightly. "You can't bring her back. But I wanted you to know her name. Emily. She wasn't just a number on a spreadsheet or a position to be cut. She was a person. She believed in your company. She believed in you." Clara swallowed hard, her throat tightening. "I didn't know," she whispered, almost to herself. "I know," Ethan said softly. "You never do." The words hit her like a slap. For years, Clara had prided herself on efficiency, on making the tough choices. She told herself that business was just numbers, that emotions had no place in boardrooms. But now, as she sat in $1,000 dress with coffee stains spreading across the fabric, she couldn't hide from the truth. Those tough choices had faces, families, stories. Around the room, the silence deepened. Even the security guards looked uncomfortable, their rigid posture softening. The manager, who had been ready to fire Ethan moments ago, now stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Ethan's voice broke the silence again. "You see, Ms. Voss, sometimes the only way to make the powerful listen is to make them uncomfortable. You spend your days surrounded by people who agree with everything you say. No one tells you when you're wrong. No one dares to. But tonight, I needed you to look me in the eye and see what your success costs." Clara met his gaze, and for the first time, she didn't look like a CEO. She looked like a human being, one who had just realized the weight of her own shadow. She opened her mouth to speak, but stopped. What could she say? Sorry? That word felt too small, too empty. Nothing she could offer would erase the pain standing in front of her. Finally, she took a slow breath. "You're right," she said quietly. "I've spent years climbing to the top, and I stopped looking down to see who I was stepping over." Ethan's shoulders relaxed slightly, but the pain in his eyes remained. "Then maybe it's time to look down," he said gently. For the first time that night, Clara Voss didn't have a comeback. She just nodded faintly, her gaze lingering on the tired man before her, a waiter who had just forced her to face what all her money and power had made her forget. And in that moment, for reasons she couldn't explain, she was grateful that he spilled that cup of coffee. The manager leaned close to Clara, whispering nervously, "Should I fire him immediately? We can have him escorted out before the press hears about this." His forehead glistened with sweat, his voice desperate to contain the situation before it spiraled. But Clara didn't respond. She was no longer thinking like a CEO, trying to protect her image. She was thinking like a person, trying to make sense of everything that had just unfolded. Instead of answering, she reached for a napkin, her movements slow and deliberate. She began dabbing at the dark brown stains spreading across her white blouse. The warmth from the coffee had faded, but the weight of the moment had not. Her eyes lifted toward Ethan. The man who had moments ago been nothing but a face in a uniform now seemed like something else entirely. A mirror. A reminder of the people her company had left behind in its race toward profit and prestige. "Your daughter," Clara asked quietly, almost hesitantly. "What's she doing now?" Ethan blinked, surprised by the sudden gentleness in her voice. "She's in 3rd grade," he said. "She loves drawing. She tells me she'll build robots one day, the kind that help people, not replace them." Clara froze. His words hit her like a punch to the gut. The irony was unbearable. Vostek's entire vision had once been to create machines that empower humanity. It was her slogan, her dream when she started the company in her 20s. Back then, she'd been the idealist who wanted to make a difference, not just make money. But somewhere along the way, she'd changed. The board meetings, the investors, the constant hunger for growth, it all chipped away at that dream. Profit replaced purpose, and the company's mission became little more than a marketing line. She stared down at her stained blouse, as if the spreading coffee were showing her everything she had become. Then, with a sudden clarity, she turned to the room full of frozen guests and staff. "Dinner's over," she said firmly, her voice regaining its strength. "Everyone, leave your cards. I'll handle the bill." A murmur of confusion swept through the crowd. Executives exchanged uncertain looks, some whispering to each other about what this might mean. But no one dared to challenge her. Within minutes, the elegant dining room emptied, leaving behind only half-eaten plates, untouched champagne, and two people who stood on opposite ends of a very human truth. Ethan stood silently, unsure if he should apologize, leave, or brace for what might come next. But Clara didn't yell, didn't call security, didn't dismiss him. Instead, she let out a long sigh, the kind that carries years of exhaustion. Not physical, but moral. "You're right," she said quietly. "We grew so focused on progress, we stopped seeing people." "Your wife's department," she paused, searching for the right words, her voice unsteady. "It was one of our first cuts. We said it was efficiency. Maybe it was cruelty." Her confession hung heavy in the air. For the first time, Ethan saw vulnerability in the woman everyone else feared. "I remember that report," Clara continued, her voice distant, as if replaying a memory she'd buried long ago. "It said automating that factory would save millions. I signed it without thinking twice. I didn't see the faces behind those numbers." She looked at Ethan then, her eyes glistening. "I didn't see her." Ethan swallowed hard. He didn't expect remorse. Not for someone like her. Clara reached into her purse and pulled out a sleek white business card embossed with her name. She held it out to him. "Bring your daughter to Vostek next week," she said softly. "I want to meet her. Maybe we can help her build those robots." Ethan's eyes widened in disbelief. "You're serious?" "I am," Clara said, her voice steady now, with a new kind of conviction. "And maybe you can work there too. Not as a waiter, but in our community outreach program. Someone who reminds us what humanity in business really means." Ethan hesitated, unsure if this was pity, guilt, or something genuine. "Why me?" he asked quietly. "Because you made me remember," she replied simply. "When I started Vostek, I wanted to build machines that made life easier for people like you and Emily. But somewhere along the line, I stopped seeing the people and only saw the machines. Tonight, you reminded me what I lost." Ethan's eyes softened, the tension in his shoulders fading. "You don't owe me anything, Ms. Voss," he said. "I didn't do this for a job or sympathy. I just wanted you to see us." "I know," she said. "That's why I'm offering it. Because this isn't about debt. It's about doing what's right." For a long moment, they both stood in silence, the soft hum of the restaurant's air conditioning the only sound between them. Then Clara spoke again, her tone gentler. "What's your daughter's name?" "Lily," Ethan said with a faint smile. "She thinks her mom's watching from the stars." Clara nodded, her voice almost a whisper. "Then let's make sure she has something to shine for." She extended her hand. Ethan hesitated for just a second before shaking it. A firm, quiet handshake that felt more meaningful than any contract she'd ever signed. As Ethan turned to leave, Clara looked down once more at the coffee stain on her blouse. It was dark, messy, impossible to ignore, a perfect metaphor for the moment that had stained her conscience, and maybe, just maybe, wash her clean again. And as he walked away, she found herself whispering under her breath, "Thank you, Ethan." Not for the apology she never got, but for the truth she desperately needed to hear. A week later, Ethan walked through the tall glass doors of Vostek headquarters, this time not as a waiter in a wrinkled uniform, but as a man with renewed pride. His shirt was clean, freshly ironed, and his shoes, though old, had been polished until they shone. In his right hand, he carried a small backpack filled with Lily's drawings. In his left, he held Lily's tiny hand, her bright eyes wide with excitement and curiosity. The lobby looked like something out of a dream. Gleaming floors, holographic displays, and walls of glass that reflected the city skyline. A week ago, he would have felt out of place here. Today, it felt different. Not because he suddenly belonged to this world of innovation and success, but because someone had finally made space for him in it. Clara Voss appeared at the top of the marble staircase, no longer in her intimidating CEO persona, but in a simple blue blouse and slacks. Her smile was genuine, softer, warmer. "Ethan, Lily, I'm so glad you came," she said, walking toward them. Lily, shy but curious, peeked out from behind her father. "Are you the robot lady?" she asked innocently. Clara laughed, bending down to Lily's level. "That's me," she said, smiling. "But you can call me Clara. Would you like to see where we build them?" Lily's face lit up like sunshine. "Yes, please," she squealed, tugging her father's hand eagerly. As they walked through the corridors, Ethan noticed something unusual. Employees smiling, chatting, even greeting him kindly. Just a week ago, these were the same kinds of people who wouldn't have given a waiter a second glance. Now it felt like something had shifted, like that one night had rippled through the entire building. They entered a bright, spacious robotics lab, where small machines buzzed and moved across tables. Engineers in white coats were adjusting circuits, coding new algorithms, and testing mechanical arms that could lift, write, and even paint. Lily ran to a workbench where a young engineer named Arjun showed her a small robotic arm. "This little guy can wave," he said with a grin, pressing a button that made the arm move back and forth. Lily giggled. "Can it draw too?" she asked, her voice full of wonder. "Not yet," Arjun replied. "But maybe you can help us teach it." Ethan stood back, watching his daughter's laughter fill the room, a sound he hadn't heard so freely since her mother passed. For the first time in years, the weight in his chest felt lighter. Clara stood beside him, hands clasped, eyes soft. "You know," she said quietly, "that coffee spill, it was the best thing that's happened to this company in years." Ethan chuckled, shaking his head. "Guess sometimes you have to make a mess to wake people up." Clara smiled thoughtfully. "You're not wrong. For so long, I thought leadership meant being perfect, never showing weakness, never admitting mistakes. But that night, you reminded me that real leadership starts with empathy." They watched as Lily excitedly sketched something on a tablet, a robot with a heart-shaped light in the center of its chest. "She has talent," Clara said softly, "and vision. We could use more people like her in the world." Ethan looked down, humbled. All she ever wanted was a chance. "I'm just glad she's getting one now." Clara nodded, her tone warm. "You know, I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night, about how we toast to success while others struggle to survive it. I realize we build a company that changed technology, but not lives. That has to change." And change it did. In the following weeks, Vostech made headlines for all the right reasons. Clara announced the Vostech Humanity Initiative, a program designed to fund education for the families of laid-off workers, support single parents, and reopen training facilities that had once been shut down for efficiency. She even rehired dozens of former employees who had been replaced by automation, giving them new roles in training and quality control. Ethan was among the first to join. Clara offered him a position as a community relations advisor, helping bridge the gap between the company and the people it served. His job wasn't about machines, it was about humans, and he excelled at it. His story became a quiet legend within the company, a living reminder that compassion and innovation could coexist. Every morning, Ethan would walk Lily to the lab before heading to his new office. She became something of a mascot there, the little girl with the big ideas. The engineers adored her curiosity, and soon they helped her build her first small robot, a clunky, smiling machine that handed out sticky notes with kind messages written on them. The first one it handed out said, "Be kind. You never know who's fighting a battle you can't see." Clara kept that note on her desk. One afternoon, as Ethan was leaving work, he stopped by Clara's office. "I didn't mean to ruin your night," he said with a small grin. Clara looked up from her computer, smiling. "Oh, you didn't," she replied. "You changed it." He paused. "And maybe we both needed that change." She nodded. Maybe the world did too. Outside the office, Lily ran down the hall with her little robot trailing behind her, its blinking eyes glowing faintly. Ethan smiled as he watched her, the embodiment of hope and second chances. And from that night on, Vostek changed too. Not because of a press release, not because of profit, but because one single dad with a cup of coffee and a broken heart had dared to make a CEO stop and see the truth. Sometimes, all it takes is a single act of courage, one small, messy human moment to change everything. If you found this story inspiring, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss another powerful video. Thanks for watching.